Hello again and welcome back to the vlog. It's been about 2 weeks since the last episode, and during this time I've been sort of intermittently working. I've been doing quite a bit more writing. I've got some PhD stuff coming up and sort of some applications that I've been needing to spend time on, and so there's not been a whole bunch of time for composition, but I have done some work. Yay! And yes, I'll show that to you now. The other thing that's happened in the past fortnight, which is significant, especially for what I'm going to say about Whitespace in a minute, is that Bastard Assignments got to spend a day doing a performance practice workshop with the immersive theatre company Punch Drunk, thanks to Snape Maltings. It was just a fantastic day. It was really helpful. I think we all found it very challenging and very, very thought-provoking for our own practice. And there were some sort of ideas in there that I really wanted to pursue quite quickly, and that seemed especially relevant to Whitespace and that idea of looking at spaces and moving round spaces and that kind of thing. One of which was the idea of starting with the space, and the work we've done on Whitespace up at Snape Maltings and then the versions at Suffolk really kind of made me rethink this space of the studio, and I knew I wanted to bring that piece back into the studio and sort of rethink what it meant based on those experiences. And the Punch Drunk workshop really helped me in terms of, that the space is where you start, and the idea of detail in the space and detail in your movements in the space, so that you don't just go to a place and be there. It's like there's small things that you can do and that there's detail everywhere. And so I was working with that, and also there was the idea of inefficient movement. Now, if you've watched any of the previous episodes that have touched on, shown bits of Whitespace performances, it's been very much about getting from A to B, and there have been different ways of doing that, but it's been very much about efficient movement, that you're in this place and you go to this place. But what they were talking about in the workshop was the idea that the journey is really can be just as detailed as the arrival, and to really think about how one is getting from A to B. So I've attempted to implement that in the work I've been doing in the last couple of weeks, with greater or lesser success. I think part of it is because I've been working in the studio, and I have obviously patterns of working movement, efficient movement in this space that are kind of hard. I'm finding them hard to let go of. It was a lot easier in the Punch Drunk sort of space to let go of efficiency and just meander and explore than I found it in this space. So I'm work in progress, that one. So I've done 2 versions of Whitespace this time around. The first one, I wanted to think about the objects in the space, sort of going back to that Punch Drunk thing about detail. And I also wanted to bring sound back into the solo piece. When I performed it in Sussex, and sort of watching back over those, it was very clear to me that as a performer, I don't really make any sound. I mean, I step on twigs and slide through mud and so forth, but the sound in those performances comes from the location. And that was important, and I've been paying more attention to the sounds of my studio, the traffic coming through my marvellous single glazed windows, when there are other people in the house, there's sort of movements, or the washing machine's on, and you can hear all of that. But also to think about the sounds that are made by the objects in the space, and then sort of progressing on from that by me in the space as well. So the first version I modified to be sort of going around the space, and as I ended up at a location, to find some way to make sound with whatever was there. yeah, it was a very interesting sort of experience. I felt there were some really lovely moments in there. Yeah, singling out the springs of my angle poise lamp. I'm very, very pleased with the sounds they make. The sounds of sort of hands, sort of fingers running along the spines of books, I'm really loving. And there are other bits that I felt were not so strong. Sort of shuffling papers and things, it just sort of devolved to the level of messing about and just normal activity. It was good to do it because it sort of highlights those sounds, but yeah, I think with both these versions that I'm showing you today, I feel that there are significant portions that are absolutely dire for one reason or another. But then there's other moments that I feel work really well and I really want to do something with them. There was a moment that was actually very beautiful to perform, where I ended up over by the window and tapping on the glass. And up close, that's a lovely sound, but the sound doesn't make it onto the video at all, and I think that is going to need something like a contact mic on the glass to be effective, but it's something I'd really like to work with, either more in this piece or in something else. I think that's actually, it was a really nice moment for me. So the second version, I wanted to build on that idea of the object sounds and sort of bring myself into it a bit more, because I think the experience of sort of the shuffled papers and things, just, it felt very everyday, which is okay, but it didn't, I felt it needed to be lifted a bit somehow, those moments that are just like everyday activity in the studio. It felt like it needed something more, and I wanted to sort of explore more sort of my position in the space too. So this kind of went back to some of the work that we did at Snape Maltings before Christmas. We were working on a new piece by Josh Spear called In the Paracinematic Cuteness, and we're doing quite a lot of vocal improvisation using what I guess you'd call liminal sounds, so kind of teeth, tongue, breath, sounds in the back of the throat, rather than sort of singing or speech sounds. So I wanted to explore that more. I enjoyed doing it. I felt I was quite good at it, if I'm honest. But I couldn't really see how to incorporate that into my practice, so I wanted to sort of play around with that and see how I might use that, how that could be sort of a valid way for me to express myself sonically. And so what I was doing then is that this next version, again using the object sounds, but as I reach an object, to not just do the object sound, but to use that to find vocal sounds that kind of merged with it. Where it works best, I feel, is that where the vocal sounds really do merge with the object sounds until it becomes quite challenging to work out where one ends and the next begins. So having done that, that version I was really uncomfortable with the transitions, with the movement from one place to another, and so I started cutting that up and sort of gluing bits together to think about it more musically. So I literally just cut up the video and sort of slammed bits together, and the repetition was nice, but I think it's yeah, it was a bit of a weird experiment because I kind of appear in the middle of the room and then I'm not there anymore. And I think for so much of it, I'm out of frame. And when you don't have a context for me moving out of frame and moving back in, you don't really have a sense of where I am in the room, just that I am there. I'm not sure what this contributes to my knowledge of the piece, and I'm not entirely sure whether I'm actually going to proceed with it because the sound quality of the video snippets is quite poor. Some of the sounds are very, very quiet, and indeed the sound of the video camera itself is louder than the sounds I'm making, and so it becomes very, very rough. But it's been useful as an exercise for how I'm thinking about the sounds and yeah, how I might deal with the space in different ways, because I've been thinking about different ways of doing the score. I've been thinking about what the score actually is. I've ended up doing a text score version which has a rough layout on A3 paper because I really wanted to convey that idea of space and just sort of working out how I can express what this piece is, because I think the versions that have been done so far, and we're now up to 11 of them, and it's not done yet, I feel every single one of them is an accurate representation of what the piece is up here. It's just that each one is built on the other, on the previous one to come up with something that's richer at the end than it was at the beginning, that reveals more to me about the spaces I'm performing in. So I've been really sort of trying to think how to convey this and how to sort of explain that really it can be so much more than just this is this, and ways of dealing with that, but I haven't got there yet. So I did this text version of the score, which was a useful step for me to define what I felt the piece was, but I don't think that's it really. And then I had this idea that possibly the score could be the accumulation of documentations of performances. So if somebody wanted to perform it, I could just say, go and look at some of the videos and make up your own mind about what you want to do. It feels a bit lazy. I think it could be helpful, but it just, yeah, it's not the answer, and so I've got to keep working on that. I haven't done any real work on dot drip line line. It's been at the back of my mind and I've been really wanting to do more with it. I've had an idea of how to progress it. Last time I played you that snippet of Josh's idea with the Lego, and I'm thinking it could be for a larger group of people, including sort of a chorus of people who have Lego in their mouths and sort of at microphones. We do have a project in the works at the moment, but it's not confirmed, so I can't really talk about it, but that might be appropriate for it. But I haven't actually been able to run any tests for this because I mentioned last time that there'd been dentistry and my mouth is still recovering and everything's very tender. So I haven't been able to test out the Lego in the mouth idea. The other idea I had was that the flute sounds might work quite well on piccolo. Now the piccolo is an instrument I loathe. I absolutely hate it. I bought my piccolo when I was about 16 because at the time I wanted to be an orchestral flautist, and basically you couldn't get a job as an orchestral flautist if you didn't play the piccolo. And yeah, it's hardly ever really been played because I hate the damn thing. And what I really wanted was an alto flute, to be honest. One day. However, for this piece, I'm actually thinking that the piccolo might be really good because the sounds are kind of breathy anyway, and I think the natural difference in pitch being that bit higher, and the natural breathiness of the piccolo in its lowest register, because none of these sounds use overblowing at all. So talking about the sounds that I was working on at Snape, I actually think it could be really interesting, but like I say, my mouth's been quite sore, and the idea of sort of trying to do a piccolo embouchure has been, yeah. I'm hoping I'm going to have a go at that this afternoon. I am going to have a go at that this afternoon. So next time, there should be some evidence. So it's very much in the realm of I've had an idea and I need to do practical tests on that to see if it's going to work. That kind of leads me into the final thing I want to talk about, which is trying to work out what on earth I'm going to have as my piece for the next Bastard Assignments performance. So this is coming up on the 5th of March, and it's going to be at the Total Refreshment Centre in Dalston. Details below. Yeah, I've been my initial idea was to do aid memoir. We'd been talking about doing it in total blackout with flashes, and I mean, I still think that sounds a fantastic idea, but my initial tests with the cameras show that actually the cameras are going to be so slow, even in sort of twilight conditions, that I think we're going to have a devil of a time providing sort of enough activity with the cameras, especially with only 4 of us. And I'm actually thinking that's not going to be at all practical. Not to mention that Total Refreshment Centre, while it's a perfectly practical venue, it's nothing to look at, really. It's just going to be a bunch of people sitting in a black box. And so I'm thinking I might possibly move that to the following gig in April, which is going to be at Asylum, which is a stunning venue, doesn't do full blackout, so there'll be a little bit of light and the cameras will hopefully be a little bit faster. And also I feel that piece might fit a bit better with the program for that gig. So I'm still trying to work that out, and sort of as alternatives I've been thinking of maybe doing a solo piece that uses some of the ideas from Dot Drip Line Line at Snape and some other ideas, and sort of trying to pull something together that's a solo piece just for me to perform at Total Refreshment Centre in March. So hence the Southern Piccolo tests. I'm thinking that could be part of it. The Lego could be part of it. But I've also been doing more work on the Altered Book project, which I mentioned a few episodes ago. I can't remember the last time I talked about that one. To do with writing and overwriting and the role of writing in my practice. And I'm wondering whether I can use some video of that in some way in that performance. So kind of slamming a few ideas together, that there's sort of some white spacey ideas in there as well. It may end up being sort of a merging of 3 completely separate projects in one. But I think it's probably easier than trying to muddle through with aid memoir. And because I think the resulting photographs from Total Refreshment Centre will be guaranteed dull, I'd quite like to give that sort of spin-off piece that has called POV a chance, by doing it in a venue that's actually going to be visually interesting, and that may have a more interesting setup in terms of the performance space than just standing on a stage with microphones. So that's basically it for the fortnight. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I'll be back again in another couple of weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye!